Ready?
I'm ready, mate.
All right, let's go. Start recording there. And here we are with the second installment of the Lenjoint MMA Show. How you doing, my friend? With Mr. Karsten Lenjoint himself.
Not too bad, man. How you doing? You all right?
Do you like the new name
mate,
of it all?
Liking it a lot.
I'm gonna say I thought you might.
It's good stuff.
Just FYI to everyone,
Yeah.
This is sponsored by Fight Fuel UK. Be sure to check them out. You know, protect our sponsors, support the sponsors, support the podcast. There we are. That's what we want to plug this. So
100%.
Today, we have witnessed quite a card. And on that card, there's a lot to talk about. But with this being said, Cage Warriors, if nothing else, this Fight Island has shown us all is how prominent Cage Warriors is for UK talent and upcoming talent. Anyway, everyone knew it because of like McGregor and stuff. But if nothing else, this should have put a proper stamp on it. So let's talk through the prelims. So who, off the bat, of the performances, which one stood out to you the most? First one comes to mind.
First one that comes to mind for me, performance-wise, was actually Jar Herbert. Because he looked so slick and was doing so well and hurt the guy 2, 3, 4 times. And then, unfortunately, got caught. But he looked absolutely amazing during the fight himself. I remember watching it thinking, like, I watched the main card live. For timing over here is perfect for me in Thailand. I got up at 7 a.m. this morning and watched the main card live. The prelims started at like 4 in the morning over here. So for me, I didn't watch that. And then I rewatched the prelims, all the prelims with my breakfast. And I was watching it and I didn't actually know the results, but I noticed that there's not been many things posted on Instagram about him. So I'm like, oh, I wonder why there's not been anything said about him. And then I'm watching the fight and I'm like, God, this guy is fucking, he's playing with the guy. He's bullying him a little bit. His jab was absolutely electric, and his right hand was just like fucking so accurate, straight on the chin, straight splitting the guard every time. And then unfortunately, like we saw in the third round, he's got caught with I hate saying a lucky punch because every punch is thrown to land, so I don't really call them lucky punches. But he got caught with a good punch. So unfortunately, but he was the one that stood out more than anybody, I think, personally.
I mean, there was so much with that fight as well. I mean, if you see like Jai Herbert's fights like throughout his career, and like Cage Warriors prime example, like his fight against like Jack Grant, you see that kind of clinical fundamentals, that kind of patient, that timing, the feinting, the footwork. It was stressful watching that. You could imagine being Trinaldo watching that sort of bouncing in and out. You could see him just sort of overreaching and see Jai Herbert sort of loading and everything. That is just like, it's just tense. Any minute he's just going to get his lights put out. It's absolutely spot on. And then to get caught with a sort of, I'll say wild shot, because again, it's unorthodox, not something sort of expected as such. Yeah. But I'll tell you who really stood out throughout the whole night was Herb Dean. I don't know what was going on with him, but he seemed to want a bit of vendetta against some of the guys to sort of let him take some damage.
Yeah.
It was a strange one. Dan Hardy was going livid. Did you hear him? Like,
Dan Hardy went absolutely mental. Yeah, Dan Hardy went absolutely mental. And he was still having to go at him right up until the interview with Trinaldo. So he's still sort of like having to go at him, talking to Herb Dean, and then he's like, oh, I'm on TV, shit, best do my job. Dan was not happy with him one little bit.
I mean, because you got to give him. There's always a bit of discretion. I think, okay, or well, he's scrambling, is he recovering? But if he's sort of gone stiff, even if he starts to recover afterwards, you think, is it worth it? And some of it is a bit too like prime examples like Tom Aspinall fight. Tom Aspinall, another prime example of absolute clinical footwork and light on his feet.
100%.
If you see if you've spoken to Tom Aspinall before, I've had him on the podcast. Little plug there. He trains with all sorts of different size guys. Now, for a heavyweight, what I really like about him is he's a good training partner. Now, he's not trying to sort of knock everyone out. He's moving around. He's learning. He's moving. Again, with that pro boxing background, you could just see it. Like, there was another guy. Who was it on the other prelim? Another heavyweight, a Canadian bloke. What was his name? Tanner Bossa, that's it.
Tanner Bonza, yeah.
That's it.
With the coolest hair on the card.
Exactly. And again,
just gotta throw that in there.
Just drop it in there. I mean, that heavyweight kind of footwork. I mean, when you hear heavyweight, you hear sort of, 3-5-0 fun, plant my feet and swing, hopefully hit the chin, and that's about it. No,
Big
these
slugger.
guys,
Yeah.
clinical. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Clinical. Now, the question now is, who would you like to see Jai Herbert come back again? So let's sort of jump around the prelims a bit. So Jai Herbert has an unfortunate blip against a veteran.
Yep.
He's done really well in that performance, really stood out. What sort of prospect of lightweight do you reckon would be a good one for him to, I don't know, get back on the horse, so to speak?
I don't know. It's a tough one. I wouldn't mind seeing anybody again because I think he proved that he'd be there. And like you said, he got a wild shot. So I think he could. But I'd like to see him maybe, although he's not ranked, he's been in there with some savages. Felder was talking during the commentary about how hard his elbows are, and how he's still got he's still got a sore head from the elbows he got hit with, and how strong he is and stuff like that. So it wasn't an easy fight to come straight in at your debut. So maybe, I don't know, maybe some guy that's sort of like on the same sort of level as him. He's had maybe like 8 to 10 fights and just on his way sort of up, something like maybe an unknown person, sort of like Jai Herbert to us is not an unknown person, obviously from the UK, but people in America wouldn't have a clue who he is really. So maybe somebody who's he's doing well on the local shows in America and then sort of getting his way into the UFC, or maybe for the Contender Series, somebody coming off that would be quite a good fight for him.
It'd be an interesting one, like a sort of a Luis Pena, maybe someone like, ultimate fighter, kind of like, got a bit of a name, still like that sort of, I don't know, they're both in that kind of trajectory to try and go upwards, but not too high profile that they don't. So not worth is the wrong kind of wording, but again, not like eligible in the same kind of like ranking system. But again,
I would say Luis Pena would be a little bit of a step up, just because he's got that name with the tough, and do you know what I mean? He's already fighting sort of like high level people. I'd like to see him maybe sort of stay at the same kind of level, and even maybe drop down one, just to get that confidence back. As well as he did, and as amazing as he looked, he suffered a big knockout loss. So that's going to damage his confidence a little bit. So maybe I'd like to see him step down a little bit. Like I say, get somebody that's fresh, 8-0 or 8-1 on the local scene in America, and then, somebody like that, rather than a Luis Pena who's already got a name. We already know how tough he is, and he's pretty slick boxing wise, and he's got some good subs himself. So maybe just a little bit of a step back.
It'd be interesting as well. I mean, stylistically, like Trinaldo, I mean, if you see some of Jai's fights as well, it's interesting who he comes up against. And I think his one submission win, that was pretty much off of a knockout anyway, pretty much. And again, it's that kind of, he adapts to a lot of different adversity. But again, this isn't the sort of Jai Herbert show. Let's move on to throughout the prelims a little bit.
No.
Let's play around a bit. So I tell you who really stood out to me. So our man Mike Grundy, a lot of time from a lot of respect for him, but his opponent, Mozvar Evloev, I can't say his name, his wrestling, like, it was unreal. Like, you got to appreciate the caliber of wrestler that Mike Grundy is. But
Commonwealth medalist?
Yeah, Commonwealth gold.
Right?
Yeah, he's unreal. Lives and breathes wrestling. But Evloev sort of just deal with it. Now, normally when you hear that kind of, sort of skill differential, it normally comes across like, made him look like he didn't know what he was doing, or this kind of thing. But no, it just looked like he was just that step ahead, and that sort of composure as well, and that gas tank. I mean, you 100%. Can see he's walking around with his feet so close together, knowing that if he gets taken down, he's going to pop up anyway. Just completely careless. And I love that. And everything else.
He wasn't bothered about the takedown at all. And don't get me wrong, Mike Grundy, oh my God, some of them takedowns, I was like, some of the timing on them double legs, especially in the first round, was absolutely beautiful. And like you say, Mike Grundy, absolute beast on a wrestling mat and beast in a cage. But the fact that he was just throwing shots because he wasn't bothered about Mike Grundy changing levels. Because as soon as he hit the floor, he was popping pretty much straight back up. The only time he got in trouble was obviously with the DARS. And how the hell did he get out of that?
He was wearing purple.
That was ridiculous.
How is he still?
His face, he's like pulling faces and all sorts, and then popped out and jumped up like nothing had just happened.
But this is the cardio as well. It makes you wonder how he's got that kind of composure. You can see sort of Grundy after that, like Because you've sparred yourself, you fought before, after a big sort of takedown scramble exchange, get back to your feet, you take a second to sort of catch your breath back and recalibrate. Those guys are doing that, then going straight back into it straight away. There's no kind of pause, no time to reset. And I don't know how they had that gas tank to keep doing that, just out of just disorientation, nothing else.
100%, because I know for a fact Mike Grundy and everybody else in the UK is training their arse off. So he's as fit as he could possibly be. But it's just like the guy was on a different level with the gas tank. It was crazy. I don't know what they do that's different to make you be that fit. I have no idea.
I mean, it'd be really interesting
to
see
to
how...
go and watch a training session.
I would love to just be a fly on the wall from any of those sessions, really, to see how they kind of
literally
deal with that. It'd be interesting to see what's next to Mike Grundy in that sense, because again, obviously being predominantly known for his wrestling, comes up against a wrestler, and when that's been nullified, is then what else happens there onwards. So it'd be interesting to see regards to his strategy and his training, how he can then, I don't know, expand on that kind of, not skill set, but preferences as such, I want to say.
Yeah, I think he's that used to being obviously so dominant with his wrestling. He maybe needs to take a step back and work on his hands a little bit more. Because then if the wrestling does go the way it did in this fight, then he's a little bit more confident. You don't have to worry about the takedown as much in sort of second and third round.
I mean, this is also something that's a bit of a concern when it comes to the more experienced, the more veteran guys, is that they kind of, okay, this is the way I do it. But that willingness to sort of change when push comes to shove. But I'll tell you what I was really impressed with was Colin's kind of approaching the corner. Because again, it wasn't a case of, okay, no effing and jeffing, no shouting, none of that, but it's a case of, okay, you won that round, he's won that one. Okay, can you win one more round? We just need 5 more minutes. Again, sort of a bit more composure, very much like, because obviously everyone's heard of how scary Colin is and how, like, the Calvin kind of level of,
I've met him in the changing room on a couple of shows and he's a scary guy.
And I remember I was in the car with Jordan the other day and he was saying about Colin's got sort of piercing blue eyes, just terrifying, sort of just looks at you, think, right, stares in your soul, you think, oh, no, I'm all right, I don't want to go there. It's too scared.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, on top of that, speaking of Calvin guys, Tom Aspinall, I was sort of touched on again his performance. Now, have you followed him throughout his Cage Warriors career?
I've seen him once or twice and didn't really take that much of attention of him, to be honest. Well, not that I didn't take attention of him, I just kind of like didn't sort of know who he was and what his kind of background was. But then obviously hearing in the build-up for this fight and obviously watching him on this card, he looked great. He was fighting a guy who's not normally a heavyweight. Have you seen the photos difference from like middleweight up to heavyweight? He looked like a different person. Like in the build-up, the little build-up they have with the montage and stuff like that, I was like, that's not the same guy. It's not the same guy.
It makes you wonder why he's gone that far up, because you kind of get one weight division thing. Okay, it's quite a big cut, it's just whatever. And it seems like he might. I don't know the bloke. I'm not going to speak out of turn, but again, he does.
No, of course.
Something there didn't feel like, I don't know, not all invested. I want to say, it just come across very much like, okay, taking the foot off the gas maybe with the weight cut is one thing, but then what else is sort of taking the foot off? What's the next kind of thing?
That wasn't just a weight cut.
Yeah, it's a little bit more.
That wasn't just a weight cut. Like I say, I don't know the guy, I don't know the circumstances behind it, but that definitely was not just a weight cut. That was a lot of trips to McDonald's, which I'm gutted about. You putting that picture up of McDonald's, and I haven't had a McDonald's for like a year.
I mean,
so I love living on this island, but we don't have a McDonald's. It's it's one of the downsides.
You enjoy your ice balls, don't you worry about that. You're all fine. You got to get what you got to get. Now, on top of that, in general, and we'll sort of dart between a couple of things. So, also happened yesterday, the Empire Grappling Island Invitational Show thing. I was well impressed with that. So, shout out to Jake Cross and all those guys to put on that kind of show and that kind of mix of talent. Now, I thought I have so much respect for him to also getting like white belts and blue belts on that show, because again, it's very intimidating, these kind of big events that, okay, when you're novice training, think, how can I ever get to that stage? And to be given a sensible opponent and good platform to really get your, not just in your name, but that kind of different experience. I mean, a lot of time for that. Now, grappling events in a cage, I think that should be the future. What do you think of that?
I love grappling events in a cage. I liked the fact that, so I heard a little bit of a sort of podcast build-up thing with the Empire guys were talking about, and they mentioned Riley, which obviously is a friend of mine from back home in Nottingham, old training partner, and he was the only one of everybody who fought yesterday who actually said, "Can I use the cage to do takedowns?" Which I think was a brilliant question from Riley, because obviously, grapplers are used to a matted area. There's no walls. There's no sort of like pinning your guy up against the fence and using the sort of like MMA style sort of takedowns. But I love the fact that they're doing grappling comps in cages now. I would be definitely interested in doing some of them in the future. Really cool idea.
That is, again, this is a real sort of test of sort of Riley's sort of maturity. Because again, if you see his match, he was composed, smart decisions, not rushing things. And again, my concern with seeing Riley sort of competing is seeing him training with Shane so much and seeing the level Shane's at, and almost trying to replicate that and trying to, I don't know, rush his sort of journey to try and catch up with Shane. But again, it's very good to see his sort of maturity and seeing how he's having his own like matches, his own experiences, and making his own name. And again, he really showed that yesterday. And on top of that, anyway,
he looks awesome. He looks awesome. I haven't trained with him for obviously a long time. The actual last time I saw him was over here. Him, Paul, Jim, and a couple of Mark, a few of the lads actually came over to Thailand for a few weeks. So they came over and actually visited me. So that was the last time I actually saw him. I haven't not trained with him for a while, but yeah, he looks awesome yesterday. Everything about him. I love the way he pushes the pace. Even though it's a grappling match, he doesn't sort of sit back and sort of like be, grappling matches can be a little bit slower and a little bit more like chess matches sometimes. But Riley's one of them guys that really pushes the pace. He went for the Imanari roll, just crazy sort of like techniques. He wasn't too worried about putting himself in bad positions. I just liked his whole style. It's really, really good and awesome to watch as well for a grappling. For just a pure grappling, it was awesome to watch. That's the kind of style that I like to watch, definitely.
And that, what you said there is absolutely fucking spot on. I love jiu-jitsu. I can't watch jiu-jitsu most of the time. When it comes to these kind of styles, 8 minutes, perfect. That kind of style, perfect. You can watch that. Anyone can watch that. If you don't know what's going on, you think, oh, fucking hell, it's all kicking off, top, bottom, this, that, and the other. It's active.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I love a 50-50 heel hook, it's not always the most easiest thing to sort of take in. But again, through that anyway, using that wall and changing that like level of wrestling and that kind of control is so different. Because again, from your like time training as well, you appreciate as well the amount the wall makes a difference, and the amount of takedowns and everything else. Like even on the bottom, trying to do like an armbar off your back when your head's against the wall. How fun doing that? It is horrible. Try and use your cover to get stacked.
Just being pushed up against the wall full stop is horrible. But again, I love the idea of that because that was my sort of style. I like the Randy Couture sort of dirty, sort of push them against the fence with, grate their face up against the fence, make it horrible and uncomfortable, and then hit them with knees and elbows and punches and stuff like that. Obviously, you take away the knees, elbows, and punches, but you can still grind them against the fence. You can still pin them, do the single legs, double legs up against the fence. I love that sort of the idea of doing the grappling in the cage. And again, like you just said, they did break it a few times and bring them into the middle. But, for them few seconds, if you want to really make it uncomfortable and stack them up against the fence, give them something to think about, and then you come into the middle and, you can even sort of like use it to walk yourself back towards the fence and stuff like that. Yeah, I like the idea of cage grappling. It's great.
It just gives extra sort of layer to it as well. And it comes to like, I don't know, it makes it a bit more, it keeps the sport evolving. And if nothing else, like, I don't know. There's a few things now I really want to make a note of it. One of the female competitors, Dakota, she's 3-0 as an amateur, and she got a really nice takedown off the fence. I think she sort of had her opponent like a cross single leg position and sort of did like a lateral drop, and then through that sort of MMA kind of style grappling. I mean, MMA grappling. If you hear, it's like when you say like Polish MMA guy, like you sort of can imagine it in your head already, sort of the Pitbull rash guard and like the rest of it. You can kind of. But MMA grappler, again, it's like you imagine the elbows in the sort of in the knees, all this kind of stuff, the sort of smothering, all this kind of style. And I feel this is part of the evolution as well. And it's not making it so, you get the conflict of jiu-jitsu versus MMA of thinking, oh, it's not technical, it's not this, that, and it's not very clean. I think this is like that hybrid. This is like a bit of, okay, you kind of have to be a bit more rough and ready, but you also have to be technical. It's that
a little bit more dirty. Yeah, I like that. Make it dirty. It's fine.
all fair level war and all that kind of stuff. Now, again,
100%.
our
I
mutual
always just tell my guys, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So, it's okay to make it a little dirty.
It's only cheating if you get caught. This
Yeah,
is it.
That's it, yeah.
Now, our mutual friend and absolute superstar, Shane Curtis, how impressed were you with him?
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realise how big the guy was that he was fighting to start with. That guy looked like a monster. I loved his shorts. I'd give him props for that. Big fan of the pink. But yeah, Shane looked absolutely amazing. That was such a slick triangle as well. Absolutely beautiful. The way he went from knee on belly into mount and then into the triangle was, I take my hat off to him. He's a top guy, and I'm sure that's the second time they've competed. So it's one apiece now, if I'm right.
Yeah, that's correct.
But yeah, like coming off a loss to a guy in a grappling competition is always going to play on your mind. So I think that was a one for Shane, and I think the way he stood up afterwards and he was like, yeah, that was like the real me sort of thing. Yeah, I was really happy for him and really impressed.
I mean, this is a huge part of it as well. I mean, coming off of that, the Polaris sort of defeat is the real thing I wanted to really make a point of this.
Yep.
Because again, he's building his name in the grappling community. Okay, he's a force to be reckoned with. He's a high-level purple belt, pretty much a brown belt, but we'll call him purple belt for now. And he's
100%. Yeah.
He's doing this well. He's beating all these like high-level black belts, and when he's given this opportunity in a big show, for whatever reason, like mentally, he didn't quite show up. But it's then that revalidation for himself. Okay, I belong there. That was just a blip. That's not who I am. And to see him come back so quickly and really just compose. Because again, when you're against someone who's a lower belt in the sense of normally being the underdog in the sense of you're a purple belt against black belts, it's win-win. Whereas if you're against someone, the equivalent of, okay, a blue belt who's high level, it's a lose-lose situation essentially. And then it's then reversing the whole situation. And it was just really interesting seeing his composure. I mean, this is where I like picking his brain, other sort of high-level competitors when it comes to these situations. That when you come to this sort of adversity, because again, if you're like a normal, I don't know, like a white belt comp wherever down the road, no one gives a shit if you win or lose. No one sees it. Whereas if it's on a stream, people are watching you, people are supporting you, it plays in your mind a bit. I can't help but feel.
As soon as you put that word super in front of a fight, there you go. As soon as you put the word super fight, and then the people start listening.
Now, regards to your training and competitions and the rest of it, would you like to have a quote unquote super fight? Or would you like to compete again in like jiu-jitsu or anything like that? Or is it a case of just right time, right place?
Yeah, bit of both really. I do like the sort of like competition format because coming from a judo background, that's all I ever did when I was a kid and teenager sort of thing. I do like the super fight thing. I love what's happening in grappling right now. Like when I was competing, even at MMA and doing grappling competitions, it literally was just competitions. There was no sort of like big stage for grapplers to go out there and do what Shane is doing. So I do really enjoy this sort of like one-off sort of fights, and there's been a little build-up and there's actual commentary now and stuff like that. What the guys at Empire did yesterday was absolutely brilliant, and I've seen a few sort of shows that now. Obviously, Chael Sonnen's got his own one over in America, which is huge, being Chael Sonnen's. But yeah, what the guys did yesterday for Empire is as good as that for the UK guys. Brilliant. So yeah, doing something like that, might interest me one day in the future. Wouldn't be just yet, but yeah, maybe. I need to step up my level of grappling though, to be honest. I've hardly done any over the last few years. I definitely need to step myself up before I got back into even thinking about competing or doing a super fight.
Now, in that in itself is really interesting, and I can't help but feel with it because the Empire grappling plan they had there, I feel it was so in their own right. They really sort of solidified that okay, they've got something there. And if you see the sort of submission underground that Chael Sonnen's won, have you seen those matches like the Craig Jones one recently with a bit of controversy?
Yes, yeah, I've seen a few of them now.
Yeah, because Craig Jones one where I think he yelped when he had was in a body triangle and he got stopped for like a verbal submission or something like this, and it all gets very confusing. It gets all, I don't know. Refereeing's not the best job in the in the best of times, but
have you ever refed yourself?
Nope, but I don't intend to.
No, yeah, I've done a bit myself, and it's really intimidating. Obviously, going back to the Herb Dean thing, he's one of the best in the business. He always will be, sort of thing. But he made a few mistakes today, and now all anybody's going to be talking about is those mistakes for a while now. It is such an unforgiving job, definitely. And like I say, I've done it myself, and it's hard. It's when you're in there, you want to give the fighters the best chance they can to kind of win, but you also got to try and protect them a little bit as well. And it goes the same with the grappling as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially with grappling, I guess a little bit more rather than or amateur MMA. When it comes to like arm bars and leg locks and heel hooks and stuff like that, people have to go to work. Not right now because obviously COVID, but generally people have to go to work the next day. They compete on a Saturday or a Sunday, and they've got to go to work on a Monday. So stopping an armbar just because somebody's not, tapped yet, but it looks like their arm's about to snap, it's down on the referee. They get sort of like a bad name for, oh, you stopped it, I didn't actually tap, I shouldn't have lost that fight. But you got to go to work you got to go to work on a Monday. So yeah, referees it's a hard time being a referee.
I mean, this is where I was so impressed with like the sort of local guys, like say Paul Nichols, for example. He's been refereeing all over the place.
Oh.
And in that kind of like composure, that kind of confidence. And again,
that guy's a legend.
100%, and he knows what he's saying.
One of the best referees in the UK, without a shadow of a doubt. That goes for kickboxing and MMA. Obviously, I know him pretty well. I work with him a lot on Battle Arena. But yeah, he's such a good referee.
And again, it's just that kind of confidence. Because again, if you say something and you're wrong or you're not sure, people will smell that. Whereas if you make a decision, okay, I know what I've seen. Prime example, Dan Moverheady. If you see his fight, I think it was Modestus's fight with the quote unquote illegal elbows, which weren't illegal. Didn't need to see a replay. Said, I know what I saw. Watched the replay back, absolutely fine. But even then, he didn't need to see. He knew what he saw, and that's the kind of conviction you need. You need that kind of, okay, I am the professional. I'm in charge. I know what's going on. Because without that, no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to respect you. Now, to go back onto the card itself. Now, let's talk about the absolute. I don't know what word to use. This phenom, Kazmat, against Reese McKee.
That guy, he's unbelievable. He fought at middleweight 10 days ago, and then he fights at welterweight. Absolutely destroys both people without even, I think, taking a punch. And then he calls out both divisions and says he's going to smash them all. I can't fault the guy.
He's unreal. I mean, Reese McKee, I was so heartbroken seeing that because I've been following him since Bama. Like, I remember the first fight I saw with him. When was it? Was it the it wasn't the Terry Brazier one. It was before that. A couple, like maybe the Richie Smolin one. But again, he's just been active. He's always been grinding away. And have you seen his call with Graham Boylan when he got the call to go to the UFC?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, goosebumps! Absolutely loved that. It was just so you could just feel it. So he's kind of really wanted to have his moment.
Yeah.
You think, you can see him. I don't care who it is. I want to go. You think, it could have been an absolute off in the sunset. And then what? So now he's come against an absolute monster. He's been mauled. Now what?
Yeah. Again, that's another hard one. He's going to get another shot. It's but that kind of spoil that's happened now after, like you said, after the phone call with Graham Boylan and, the emotion and everything and how it was. If you'd have won that first fight in the UFC, it would have been like a dream come true sort of thing. And especially sort of like the way he lost as well was, it was hard. But he'll come back. He's a good guy. He's a grinder, like you say. He works hard. So I think he'll come back and he'll do all right. He'll get a couple of good wins in the UFC. Just hopefully he gets somebody who's not so much of a savage in his next one.
I mean, this is it's always an interesting one. It's a double-edged sword because you don't want people having sort of
Yeah,
spoon-fed fights, and you don't want
of
them
course
getting
not.
scored by
Yeah,
absolute veterans. So it becomes a bit of a funny one. Now, without going into too much detail on the rest of the card, upcoming events, who would you like to see next for Darren Till? Because again, after the Whitaker result, again, we'll go into details of the whole 5 rounds, but let's just go into what's next. So trajectory.
Okay. So Darren Till was number 6 in the world, I think, before he went into this fight.
Yeah.
And obviously, we know the result. Darren Till lost. It wasn't a good fight for him at all. I think he just never really got started. But where he goes from here, don't know. It's a hard one because he's got such a big name. He's already had a title fight at welterweight. He's got such a big name. He's beat who did he beat in his last fight? Gastelum. Kevin Gastelum. Yep, Kevin Gastelum. So he's already beat him, which is one of the bigger names, obviously, in the middleweight division. I really don't know who I would put him with next.
I want Mike Perry.
Maybe Gastelum too.
I want
Mike Perry would be an amazing fight. But again, Mike Perry is a welterweight, not a middleweight.
No, it doesn't matter. They'll go catch it. They'll work it out.
I don't get. Yeah. I think he'd quite happily just fucking go up for that fight.
Raw dog him.
But yeah, a Mike Perry fight would be. That's a fan's dream, that one. But as far as where he goes from now, Gastelum rematch would be quite cool. But again, they've just fought each other. Maybe somebody different. But they are both coming off losses, so possibly.
I mean, again, it's an interesting one. I think what I'd like to see from Till would be another kind of something to a Gastelum, like a welterweight who fights at middleweight. That kind of like, okay. Because the thing with Whitaker, he's fucking massive. I mean, so is Till, but like, Whitaker's massive. So it'd be interesting to see someone a bit more of a, I don't know, because again, it's similar to the Wonder Boy fight, where it's a lot of trying to be too technical, trying to play out too much, but again, without that kind of pulling the trigger. And it gets even more interesting when you see the Masvidal fight as a sort of comparison from there. It's the other end of that, trying to practically finish and then getting caught. It makes you wonder what's going on in his mind, because prior to was the Woodley fight, he was undefeated in MMA, I think?
Yes. Yeah.
Because he's had quite a few, he's taken quite a few losses since then. But the way he's handled them, as much as it's come across very mature and very he gets it. I'm curious how it actually affects him. Like regards to his performance and anxieties.
Yeah. Mate, a loss is always going to affect you in some kind of way. Whether you sort of disguise it with how you're coming across, it's always going to affect him. And his confidence is going to start. He's lost a few now, like you said, and it's going to start affecting his confidence. So, I don't know. He just needs to maybe change his style up a little bit. Like you say, he comes across very technical and very patient, and he's playing that sort of like trying to set traps and stuff like that. But it's just not really helping him much at the moment. I mean, that's the only reason why Whitaker really won that fight was because he did a little bit more than Till. The fight wasn't the most interesting to watch, really. I was sat with my friends watching it in a bar here actually in the morning, and we were kind of having a bit of a laugh about how the commentary sort of like, it's a very technical fight, rather than saying it was a little bit boring. And they came out with there's some really sort of like high level striking, setting traps going on here, and it's basically they were just saying that it was a little bit boring, because none of them were really sort of pulling the trigger too much. So yeah, I love Till. Till, he's great. I've loved him since he first got into the UFC, but he needs to maybe step it up a little bit while he's fighting. It's all right trying to set the traps if the traps work, but they've not seemed to work in his last few fights.
I mean, this again, it might be like opponent-wise, stylistically, how it comes against.
Yeah.
And it depends on, I don't know. I mean, Yoram Romero would be an interesting one. Someone a bit more proactively trying to wrestle, even though he doesn't wrestle. I don't know why. He levels of wrestling, doesn't wrestle anymore. He just sort of stands and bangs.
Yeah.
Again, it's all sort of stylistically as to who would be an interesting matchup. Now, on top of that as well, Big Rob Whittaker, the Reaper. Who's next for him, do you reckon? It's got to be Izzy, surely.
The rematch? I don't know. Who have we got? So we've got, obviously, Izzy's champ.
Yep.
Costa's number 1. Whittaker's number 2. Who's number 3 down that list at the moment? Yoel Romero, but obviously they've played it out a few times now, so I wouldn't be that interested. Who's next in that division?
I'm just pulling that up now. Let's have a look. UFC middleweights.
Is it Hermason? Is that how it's said? Who just beat Kelvin Gastelum?
Jared Cannonier is number 4. And Dan says number 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, it's interesting. Paulo Costa. Yeah, Izzy, Whittaker, Costa. It's got to be Izzy next, purely for fairness, I'd say, because it gets quite tricky when it comes to this sort of level. Regards of how much more do you expect them to, I don't know, fight to prove what they've already proved, essentially. I mean, the title system's a bit of a funny one anyway, because it's MMA math. How could one person be the best when they could be beaten by someone else? And if you're undefeated, it's a bit of a, I don't know. It all gets very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Izzy could be next, but Izzy's got to get past Costa first. That one's already booked in, right? For
it is indeed.
September.
Speaking
End of August, September, possibly.
That reminds me, speaking of upcoming events, we have the trilogy. We have Stipe and DC.
Stipe and DC.
What are you thinking?
I'm going for DC.
See, whatever happens, no one's going to like Stipe.
I don't know if that's a heart over head. I don't know if that's a heart over head, but I love DC. He's fucking mint.
See, I love them both. I feel Stipe is going to win this one. But regardless of what happens to Stipe, I feel he's not going to get any respect either way. And everyone's going to be...
Unfortunately not.
It's a shame, but it's one of these people, for some reason, he's just not got that. I don't know, I think they tried not to market him because he's a part-time fighter. He's a part-time and firefighter as well. He's sort of... I don't know, it's an interesting sort of concept.
They should push that, surely. You would have thought they'd push that even more so. But, I'm still going for DC. I don't know, I think DC's clever enough to know that, he didn't perform his best in the second fight. And I think he's clever enough to make the changes that he needs to grind it out for that third fight. I think you'll see a different sort of... I don't think he'll be headhunting as much as he was in the second. I think the first fight obviously got to him a little bit, thinking, I'll just clip him again and I'll knock him out. And then obviously Stipe ended up being, real tough in the second one. First couple of rounds, he was like, on the back foot. And then, when he started using their body shots, really sort of took over in the third and fourth round. And then obviously they finished him in the fourth, was it? Or fifth? Either. But so I think DC is clever enough to know that he needs to change his tactics and he can't headhunt it again like he did in the second. So I think you might see him wrestle a little bit more. Maybe sort of like tire Stipe out a little bit with the wrestling. I really want to see DC come back and take this third fight. And then that's it. That's him done. He's going to ride off into the sunset and be one of the best commentators that we have at the UFC now.
So I'm going to throw this out there. Out of nowhere, Stipe pulls out, Brock Lesnar stands in last minute. And then he gets his payday. And then everyone gets what they want. And then Stipe gets
that would be an absolute dream for DC. Whether that's going to happen, I don't know. Maybe Brock Lesnar runs down halfway through the fight, jumps over the side of the cage with a steel chair.
Hell of a sell, isn't it?
Maybe more likely. Yeah. Hits them both, picks up the belt and runs off with it like, whole full WWE style.
That's Vince McMahon and Dana White main event. That's what we want.
Yeah, definitely.
100%. All right, my friend. We'll call it a show there. Where can people find you in the old social media?
Social media, Karsten Lenjoint on Instagram and Karsten M. Lenjoint on Facebook.
And remember, guys, if you want to send in any topics or any questions, send it to Fisticuffs_podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Cool.